Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Saddleback Pod. We are fortunate to have Angie here of the, I'm going to screw this up, it's the Women's Center of Greater Lansing.
You did it.
Oh
Good job.
my gosh. 1 for 1 here. So, I mean, how this kind of happened was Malik reached out to me about possibly doing, I think it was just a vending portion of the boat race. And I'd known Malik for a few years now. He's awesome, just wonderful voice in the community around the Greater Lansing area. Is always doing something, and of course, you know, I'm gonna pick up when he calls. So
I mean, obviously,
we chatted a little bit, and you know, I kind of stopped halfway through. I'm like, why are there two dudes talking about the Women's Center of Greater Lansing? Like, this is interesting, and it just kind of, I don't want to say unfolded this way, but you know, I started on mine being like, this is something I wasn't too familiar with at the time. Malik, have shedded some light on this thing. Like, yeah, we got to figure out how to make sure these things kind of continue to happen because it's such an interesting organization. So now you're here, and you can kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and the Women's Center and all the great events and everything that happens to make it work.
There's so much, and yes. So happy that we have Malik on board now. So he's our relationships manager, which is a really nice way of saying like he schmoozes the people who take care of us.
He networks, yeah.
He networks, I guess is the proper word. And yeah, so he's been really great at helping us make better connections and stronger connections. We actually have Saddleback has actually donated to us in the past, but we didn't really have a very strong connection or relationship with you guys. So that's where Malik's coming in. It's really cool. So at the Women's Center of Greater Lansing, I'm the director of communications and operations, which is a super fancy way for saying I do a whole lot of stuff.
That's a good title, though,
I do like a little bit of everything. But honestly, right now everything is Dragon Boat. Everything is Capital City Dragon Boat Race. So that's coming up soon. It's September 15th.
Okay. Well, how long has the Dragon Boat race been going on?
You know, it's been over 10 years that we've done it. I can't remember if this is our 12th or 13th.
Okay. Have you been involved with it since the beginning of it?
No. So I joined the Women's Center during COVID, during the pandemic. There was no Dragon Boat race. We were doing virtual races, which were pretty, you can imagine. Yeah. They weren't really that fun. So last year was our first race back on the water.
Okay.
And it was small. It was very humble. But it was just to get us up and going again. Mm-hmm. Historically, most of the races had happened on the Grand River downtown. Due to just some logistic complications, we ended up having it at Hawk Island last year. I think our last one in 2019 was also Hawk Island.
Okay.
So last year we decided, we're going to go forward. We're going to do Dragon Boat. And they were like, cool, Angie, you're it. And I'm like, never even been to one of these before. I have no idea what this is. So I tapped the minds of some of our former founders. Patsy King was a huge help for me. She's a former director at the Women's Center, and she still volunteers. I talked to folks that had paddled before for the races and kind of got a vague idea. So I had a lot of support last year, and we got it up. And now this year it's going to be the same, but a little bit better. I'm kind of hoping to grow it back to its former glory every year.
Okay.
And
so those who aren't familiar with the Dragon Boat race, can you tell me a little bit about what is to be expected from a glorious day like that?
It's nothing, whatever you're imagining, it's probably not that, because it wasn't for me. So it's actually really fun. So what we do is we recruit folks from all over the area. We've got people that paddle all over the Michigan. They build teams. Teams can be like 18 to 22 people, right? So they show up on race day.
Okay.
And we have, so we work with Dynamic Dragon Boat Racing. They are the company that comes in with the boats. So they come in the night before. We are loading boats into the lake by hand, although I think Hawk Island got new docks this year, so fingers crossed. And then, so the morning of the race, the teams all show up. There's anywhere from 10 to 20 teams, and they get a chance to practice on the actual boats that they'll be racing on. And then they get like safety meetings with Dynamic Dragon Boat, and they get to just really cheer for each other. And they show up in their matching shirts, and they set up their little campsites, and it's really fun.
Okay.
So then the rest of the day, so after practices are done and we kick off the race, each team gets to race a few different times against other teams. So at the end of the day, the winner is decided on average race time.
Okay.
So you could potentially lose every race that you're in by a few seconds, but still come out on top.
Yeah.
Last year, our number one was F45 out of East Lansing.
Okay.
And they had never done a dragon boat race before.
Yeah, but they're athletes.
I
That
know,
doesn't seem
I
very
know.
fair.
They're coming
Like,
back this year to defend their title too,
just-
and yeah, it's
intimidating. Like,
it's a very intimidating. They came out like literally looking like Olympians, and I was like, well, okay.
Did they have like the unitards?
They did not.
Oh,
although
man.
I could bring that up to Phil and see if that's something they'd be interested in this year. So they race all day long. We race typically from like 10 to 3.
Okay.
In different heats. We have people of all walks of life racing. There's a youth team from Everett High School puts a team together.
Nice.
There are teams that have people in their 80s paddling. It's just a mixed bag.
Okay.
Some of them are corporate teams. For instance, I know Merit Labs is having a team this year. So Merit Labs will pay their entry fee, and then they'll recruit from their own staff to be paddlers.
That's awesome.
Some are just community teams, just teams of folks that just get together and want to paddle together. And then there are survivor teams, which means that at least half of their paddlers have to have survived breast cancer or domestic violence.
Oh, wow. Okay. So this isn't necessarily like the Olympics or anything like
It's
that.
not.
It's meant to be fun.
It's meant to be fun.
Community-based and just
Yes.
an enjoyable event. How many teams do you have registered thus far?
Right now, I believe we're at 11 teams,
Okay.
and we can have up to 20. So we do still have room for
So somebody
a few more
that's
teams.
interested about putting together a team, they should just go to your website.
For sure, yeah.
Kind of go that route. What other things are there going to be there to, it's from a spectator standpoint? Is it just
Yeah.
comedy or like
It's
what?
not comedy. There are a couple occasions where it is. But for the most part, no, you just come out and you cheer for your favorite team. There's vendors, there's food trucks, Malik is the DJ that day.
He's
So
emceeing the
he's
whole thing.
emceeing, so there's music, there's all kinds of things to do. I can't give out too many spoilers yet.
Oh, you don't know
But
that.
it's also at Hawk Island, which
Yeah.
is a really fun place to hang out
Yeah,
anyway.
so even if you're on the beach at Hawk Island and you're watching all of this kind of excitement happening, it's just another thing that kind of the greater Lansing area can offer and you can be a part of.
Definitely. You can show up and know nothing and be a part of it.
So like obviously this is an event that, your organization's putting on, you're putting a lot of work and effort into this. Are there other ways that people can support through this event or just in general?
Yeah, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, so everything we do is made possible by sponsors and donors, grants if we apply and get chosen for grant money. So we are always looking for community support. Now, this is our 19th year operating at the Women's Center, so we are very well supported in the community. Lansing has taken really, really good care of us.
That's awesome.
And it just never stops, which is really cool. So yeah, folks can join on as sponsors. If their business wants to be a sponsor, they can do that. If they just want to show up on race day, they can donate towards their favorite team. The team that raises the most money on race day wins a separate prize. So that's kind of fun as well.
Can't spoil that one either, I'm assuming.
Can't spoil that one either.
Okay. So let's kind of, I don't want to completely take away from the race itself, but like, where do these funds go? And tell me a little bit about the Women's Center. I
For sure.
browsed the website, but obviously, I don't know a ton about it. I would love to know, like, who are you helping? What is the goal of the center and how it helps the community out?
Absolutely. So it's long. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready.
So we provide a really large host of services. When we first started out in 2005, it really was started as a gap filling service.
Okay.
So it was started by a group of social workers that were working in the community and realized that while other agencies were helping to get women out of abusive relationships, there wasn't a lot of support services to keep them out.
Gotcha.
There wasn't a lot of services to help them gain independence and empowerment to the point where they no longer saw that as an option for themselves.
Okay.
So which is really how we were born. And honestly, that's what we're still doing, just in slightly different ways. Most of our services are the same, but we have expanded. So one of the biggest things that we do where most of our fundraising goes towards is our clinical department. So we offer individual and group therapy to our clients at no out-of-pocket cost to them. So a lot of our fundraising goes to pay for therapists.
It's powerful, though. I mean,
yeah, people got to make a living. We have to pay our therapists,
Yeah.
and they work really hard. So we see anywhere, depending on how many therapists we have on staff, sometimes it's like 300 visits per year of individual counseling that we're giving away, as well as we run a domestic violence survivors therapy group continuously throughout the year. And then there are some other survivor groups as well. We do like a sexual assault survivors group on occasion, anxiety. I can't even remember. There's a few others that are just kind of based on client needs. But the DV survivors runs year round, and that's a huge one for us. So the majority of our clients, especially those that take the counseling, are survivors of domestic violence, sexual violence, or both.
Wow. Okay.
So that's where most of when we do big fundraisers like Dragon Boat or like We Laugh comedy show, that's where most of that funding goes, is towards therapy payroll.
Okay. So
some of the other services that kind of wrap around that, so we do career counseling, we do financial counseling, we have a career boutique, which a lot of folks in the area know us for that because they donate their nice women's professional clothing to our closet. And then clients can come in and get the proper attire that they need to have an interview, to go to court, whatever it is that they need to look nice for. They can come in and get that stuff. We give out personal hygiene products to folks that need it, feminine hygiene products. And then sometimes we do life skill workshops, just depending on kind of what the client needs are.
Wow.
One of the biggest things that we do probably all day, every day is just connecting folks to resources in the area.
Okay.
Folks can walk in, they can call, they can email, and they can say, hey, this is what the issue is. This is where I need help. Where do I go? And even if it's not something that we offer, we will try really hard to get a personal connection between that client and the source that can help them.
Wow. So you're seeing just a ton of situations, like just from all over the place. And
yes,
I think I mean, to me, it just seems like that's a big one. Like when you're talking about the counseling and things like that, of like having somebody that's probably either heard your story to some degree or can talk you through it is probably, I don't know, at least, I mean, it's not comparable, but like on the business side of things, I'm always like, I feel like I'm on an island.
Yes.
I don't have anybody to talk to. I don't have the answers, like there's nobody that can help me out with some of these problems. When the reality is somebody can help me out to some degree. They just, at the bare minimum, just be a sounding board and just listen to my bitching for hours.
The biggest human want is really just to be heard.
Yeah.
And understood is a bonus, but just to be heard is such a bare necessity for humans. And a lot of folks, especially survivors of severe trauma, they're also on an island. And not only do they not feel heard, they don't feel like they deserve to be heard. They feel a lot of shame and guilt about what happened to them, even though it was 100% never their fault.
Mm-hmm.
So just giving them a really safe space to walk into and get the counseling. And sometimes they just come and hang out. Like sometimes they'll just come and bring their laptops and maybe they're working on something, or they just want to be around, people that are not going to judge them and that are going to help them and empower them to do better in their lives.
Yeah, I think that the word, I don't want to say it's a bug, like safe space got thrown around a lot for it. And this all seems like this is
very
definitively what that is.
Yes.
It's just a place where if you're dealing with something, if you don't have the necessary, maybe the resources or the tools, and you're just having some problems, that's a good resource for.
Yeah, we've been safe spacing it since 2005.
That's a sweet shirt, man.
I'm not saying that we started it, but we might have started
safe
it.
Spacing since 2005.
It's a new slogan. I just came up with that. Sorry, Rebecca. Rebecca's my boss.
Bumper stickers are just going to be everywhere.
But it really, truly is. I mean, it's a really cool place to hang out. I mean, folks come in there with all kinds of issues, and it's just a cool space because no matter what your issue is, you're heard.
Mm-hmm.
And my favorite piece is we absolutely do not put up any barriers. We do not check employment. We do not check income. We don't check if you're illegal documented or legally documented. We don't check any of that. We don't care. Mm-hmm. It's called the Women's Center, but if you are a male and you walk in or you are identify as a female or as a male, we don't care. Mm-hmm. If you are a human being, you can walk in, you can call, you can email, and we're going to help you with whatever we can help you with. So there's no barriers to getting services.
how difficult is it for you to experience some of these things? I mean, it has to be, I don't want to say a place of power, but you have to, stand your ground and be like, give the confidence in the individual that you're in a better spot. But at the same time, there just must be some horrific experiences and things that come through your door. And
so one of the things, so just give a little background. When I first started during COVID, there were 2 paid employees. There are now 8.
Okay.
Since the pandemic, our demand has risen astronomically, which is good and bad. Bad is there's just more people out there suffering, and the good is that they're coming to us and asking us for the help. So we're able to grow as we can. It's two-sided. So I always tell people I love my job, but I wish I didn't have it.
Yeah.
I love my job. I love being there every single day, but I hate that I have to be because me having to be there means that there are still people out there hurting and being hurt by others. So it's equal parts rewarding. Some of these clients, I get to watch them just completely transform their lives. I mean, they're doing the work. We're just cheering them on. They're coming in doing really, really hard stuff. And watching them just completely change as a person and watching them grow and evolve and knowing that their kids are going to know completely different lives than they did. And then those kids as kids are never even going to sense that ever again. It's the coolest, most powerful thing. And not all of our clients are success stories. And that's okay. If they come in 1 time or 100 times, we're going to love on them the exact same every single time. And we're just going to keep doing the work no matter what. But yeah, so some days it's a win and some days it's a loss. And some days they come in with success stories and sometimes they come in with nightmares.
And it's got to be a roller coaster for you.
It is,
then on their end, it's got to be just
it's way worse.
Scary version of that roller coaster. But I'm sure on the success side, it's the same thing though. Like your high is just way higher than theirs. I mean, or theirs will be
theirs
great.
is way bigger than ours.
And that's really really cool. And obviously you can't talk about these experiences, but it would be interesting to hear some of the triumphant stories of
it's really nice. I can give you a few examples. So we do have a computer lab, and so sometimes folks will just come in and they just need help with their resume or they need help applying for benefits or whatever it is. They can come in and use the computer lab. So I had a client a couple years ago that was coming in most every day for about 3 straight months. Getting help on her resume, getting help practicing for interviews, applying for jobs. She had gotten out of a very violent and abusive relationship. She had never worked before. Outside of I think she worked as a teenager. But she married very young. He didn't allow her to work. He had alienated her from her friends and family. She really didn't have a support network. It took her months to work up the bravery just to walk in our door and ask for the help. And then she showed up. We said, this is what you need to do. And she did it. And she did it really well. And she did it with courage every single day. And then all of a sudden, she stopped coming in. And we were like, oh, man, I hope she's okay. We didn't hear anything. And usually for us, no news is good news.
Okay.
So we didn't hear from her. And probably a year went by. And she came in and she recognized me and she said, oh my gosh, Angie, you're still here. And she ran over and gave me a hug. And I'm thinking, I have literally no idea who this person is. I have no idea who this woman is. But she knows me. We must have connected at some point. So I'm like, okay, hey girl, well, how's it going? And then the whole time I'm thinking, you got to know this person. Yeah. And she was like, oh my gosh, are you still doing this? Are you still doing this? And I'm like, okay, clearly we have talked. And then I said, I'm so sorry. Can you please tell me your name? And she told me her name and I went, no way. Completely different person. She came in just the way that she walked, the way that she presented herself, the way she was taking care, the way that she spoke. Yeah. It was so different from the person that I knew previously that I didn't even recognize her. And so I was like, oh my God, where have you been? You just stopped showing up. What's going on? And she says, oh my gosh, the last job that I applied for, the one I really wanted and I didn't think that I would get, and you told me to apply anyway, I got the job. And she's like, I'm living on my own now. I got my kids back. Everything's like, it's not perfect, but everything's really good. I'm in a really good space. I'm still getting therapy. I love my work. And it was just, and so of course we just sat in the lobby and cried together because that's what you do when someone walks in like that. So
that's the women's center.
That's
we just
what we do. So it was really cool just to see that, what we thought was just, okay, she's working with us for an hour a day. It's probably not that big of a deal. It's probably, we do this all day long with clients. And then for her to come back and just show us in such a tangible way, like, look at me, I'm a completely different person, was so powerful. And it was just a really good reminder that like every little moment that we spend with these clients is potentially changing their life.
Yeah.
And we're not the ones changing it. She's the one that did the work. I literally sat next to her at the computer and went, yeah, I like that. Yeah, that sounds good. Yep. Maybe talk a little bit more about that. And she did it all.
That's awesome.
So we just were there to, hype her up.
On the, in that example, you're working on resume building a little bit of confidence, I'm assuming, in there. What are the barriers on, like, from my standpoint, like, we obviously get lots of applicants. What do you see the barriers are that, like, an employer has? Like, how do they overcome some of those things?
Yeah.
Like,
so I think a lot of employers, when you put out a job posting, so we just posted for a position the other day, and within 24 hours, I had over 100 applicants.
Geez.
So that's overwhelming as an employer, especially as an employer who doesn't have a lot of time to sort through all of these. And I think a lot of employers just skim through resumes and they see somebody and they're like, oh, well, she hasn't worked in 7 years. Or, oh, well, she hasn't really held down a job. The longest she's ever held down a job is 6 months. And I think they just immediately kind of discard that resume and don't give that person an opportunity to maybe explain that. And especially with a lot of our clients, I encourage them to write cover letters, even if they're not asked for one, explaining that in a privacy protected way, but in a way that employer might go, oh, okay. For instance, my client that wasn't allowed to work. She has a huge gap in her resume. Obviously, she's like a 30-year gap in her resume, which most employers are not even going to look at. But she was working on the skills. She had the skills needed for the job. She just didn't have the employment history. So I think for employers, when they see something like that, if you see that the skills match, but maybe the job history is a little lacking, maybe just reaching out and having a very candid conversation with that person, maybe even pre-interview. Like, hey, I see you have the skills, but you don't, what's going on with your job history?
Yeah, we have one of our general managers on staff she was a stay-at-home mom for a long period of time, and I'd have to talk to her again about, but she just wanted a part-time job, but I remember that being a barrier of entry of just being like, you haven't worked in 10 years, like, the world's changed, like, there's all these things that are happening, and even today, I mean, she's held with all this responsibility. I mean, she completely runs a restaurant, she's got multiple people underneath her, and she will admittedly say that, like, throughout, like, I'm still kind of learning this stuff, and which is fine, everybody's learning this stuff, but it seems like the same kind of thing of like, man, you did have to get in the door, and you did actually have to explain, like, listen, I was at home taking care of the kids, or X amount, like, this was a choice, and but I want to get my feet wet, and
absolutely.
And sometimes, getting somebody, at least on my end, that doesn't have necessarily all the technical endorsements or work history is a blessing, because it still comes back to the core of that individual of what are they willing to go through to make this thing work? What are they going to bring to the table? And sometimes it's the people with, like, I don't know, the hardest histories that sometimes can shine the brightest. It's
like that tech stuff. You can teach that. That's teachable.
Yeah.
But you can't teach someone necessarily how to be a very patient and empathetic person. There are skills that just can't really be taught. Yeah. They can be modeled, but not necessarily taught. So and I am going to apologize up front to Allie. She's one of our career coaches at the Women's Center, because I'm probably going to misspeak a little bit about this. But I always encourage our clients to, if there is a gap, to fill that gap with the truth. If you're listing, oh yeah, I worked at Walmart, and then I worked at Menards, but there's a gap in there, put in there, I stayed at home with my kids. I took care of my father. That's fine. You know, employers and potential employees are all humans. We're all dealing with life.
Yep.
So I think just being honest and upfront and filling those gaps with the truth without getting into detail, I think that's really powerful. And I think as someone who right now is going through a stack of resumes on my desk, I appreciate that as an employer. Just being like, okay, there's a gap there, but she was staying at home with her kids. That's something that people do.
Yeah.
So that's understandable.
Yeah, I think that's the keep hammering away at it kind of mentality. Like for us, if, you know, we try to endorse the idea of submitting an application with a resume online, and then that gives us the time to vet it. But if you, took the initiative and came into the restaurant and really bought a slice of pizza, it's gonna be $4, and just said, "Is the general manager here?" And you walked up and said, "This is a great slice of pizza. Thank you so much. My name's, I don't know, Diane. I did apply the other day. I just wanted to give you, just make sure that, I'm here. I'm a human."
Absolutely.
It does go a long ways. For us on our staff, we've had those things happen where somebody will be like, so-and-so followed up in person. It is a standalone type thing. Not everybody does it. Now, that being said, it's like if everybody did it, you'd have 100 people at your door to go with that. But
yeah, you'd be busy.
It's few and far between. Because I think a lot of people do take the approach now of if I just blast as many resumes out there as I can, something's going to stick. But you still have to be passionate about where you want to be, the environment that you want to be. We need to, as much as you're selling yourself, we need to sell you too. There has to be something on the other end of this thing, and it's normally not money.
Yeah.
There has to be, it obviously that
you have to have a why.
It. But yeah,
you just need a why.
There has to be something fulfilling in there that you think you can either make a difference or we can help you make a difference. And it's supposed to be a relationship. It's not supposed to be just, hey, cool, you're here. Let's do this. All right. Now you've moved on. There's more to it, which is hard. It is. There's no right way to do it. It's an art, and I don't know. I haven't mastered that one yet.
I honestly, I just tell clients all the time, you're a person. Go out there and people.
Yep.
Just go be a person.
Yep.
Be a real, live, walking, talking person.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what employers want. They want someone that they know they can depend on, that is honest and not just upfront with them.
Yep.
And if there's something you need to explain to an employer, try it in a cover letter or send in your resume and then give them a phone call.
Yep.
Hey, you probably skipped over my resume because, but here's why.
Yep.
I think that goes a long way. Just that, like you said, kind of that personal touch, that personal outreach.
Yeah.
I actually so we also do interns. We host interns at our, at the Women's Center.
Okay.
Undergrads and graduate level interns. And before the summer semester, I took my family out. We went to Qdoba to get burrito bowls. And
which are delicious, by the way.
Which are amazing.
You don't want to overshoot that.
This is not sponsored by Qdoba, but it should be. But we stopped there. It was a late night, so we stopped there. And there was a girl working behind the counter, and I had my lanyard on from the Women's Center, and she's making my food, and then she's like, "Do you work for the Women's Center?" I said, "I do." And she's like, "I want to intern with you. I want to intern there."
That's awesome.
And I said, "Oh, you know about us?" And she's like, "Yes. I love the Women's Center. I love everything that you guys do. I really want to intern with you guys. Who do I need to talk to? What do I need to do?" And I said, "Well, are you an undergraduate or a graduate?" And she said, "I'm an undergraduate." I said, "Then it's me that you need to talk to." So we
start scooping that guac now.
A little extra sour cream, you're in. So we, just kind of chatted for a few minutes and then exchanged information. And sure enough, she interned with us all summer, and she was amazing.
That's awesome.
But I had never been approached out in the wild like that by a potential intern. So that was pretty cool.
Interns in the wild.
Interns in the wild. It was really neat.
That's
that
awesome.
she just saw the opportunity and she took it, and I really admired her for that.
That's really cool.
Instead of just doing her job and maybe sending me an email, she was like, "Nah."
Taking initiatives, it's
huge.
It's the lost art.
Yeah.
Just grab the bull by the horns, and
Go
if
for
you come
it.
up a little bit short, that's okay. Mm-hmm. Just try it again. Eventually, you're going to get there. Yeah, we don't want to lose that. To kind of loop back to, the big thing I wanted to touch on was the Dragon Boat, and all the ways that the community. Gosh, I don't know how to say this right. You guys are obviously valuable to the community. You just explained all the great things that you guys can provide to people in general, specifically women. And in order for those to work, we do need the support of the community.
Absolutely.
And in the full circle kind of thing, I think the Dragon Boat, the comedy, we don't really think we can get to that maybe some other time on that, but are all just great ways to be a part of something.
Yeah.
And I love events that can provide entertainment or something to do while also supporting something else.
For sure.
And this seems like the home run to me.
It is. I absolutely love the Capital City Dragon Boat Race. It's just such a really fun event, and it's really powerful. Last year, we had the Everett team, the high school kids come out, and I'm going to plug them because they deserve it. They were amazing. I mean, these kids came out had never paddle boated before, had no idea even, I don't even really think what they were getting into. I don't think they understood. And then they showed up and they were just ready to rock. They were out there just crushing it. And they were jumping in and helping other teams. They were running around and running errands for other teams. They were just really in it to win it. And it was the coolest experience to watch these teenagers just show up and really entrench themselves, not only in the event, but in the community that was participating in the event. I mean, it was just amazing. So Everett Vikings, Coach Benton, you're amazing. And I'm so glad they're coming back this year. But I mean, they were so powerful that a lot of us who were either working in it or participating in it, like we were choked up just watching these young Lansing kids just come out and really show up. And it's such a huge way for their community. And they were just beaming the whole day. No matter how hard we worked them, they were so happy to be there. And they actually did really well time-wise, too. So they were really out there killing it on the water as well. But just watching everyone cheer for them. I mean, even the other teams, like family members of other teams were cheering so hard for Everett. Like I was out there just screaming my lungs out for Everett because they just were having so much fun and they were just really working so hard.
That's awesome.
So just that camaraderie during the event, you show up as strangers and you leave as friends. And I mean, there was hundreds of us there, and I can tell you who was there and who wasn't, just because it was such a fun event and we just really bonded really well. And that's probably my favorite part about Capital City Dragon Boat is, the pros aren't the ones out there doing it. It's just us regular people out there doing it, and it's so
no
fun.
idea how many times in my mind I've done those. Should we do one of these damn boats or not?
Yeah, it's weird that you don't have a boat. I'm just going to say it's weird. There's still time to sign up.
I don't have a great excuse. I'll have to check my calendar. We're going to be there doing pizza.
That's true. You're doing pizza. Well, speaking of the Everett team, you guys fed the Everett team last year, by the way. Slice by Saddleback fed the volunteers and the staff, and then
why didn't they win?
Fed the Everett team. I'm surprised they didn't.
Why didn't those carbs go to a good place?
They were loving that pizza, especially the pickle pizza. They were killing it.
Well, Angie, as we kind of wrap up, like what kind of messaging? I mean, what's the best way to get involved with something or get a hold of you?
Yeah.
I mean, not through one of your 100 job applications. Like, I don't know.
Please don't do that.
Don't do that.
So the best way, honestly, is our website or our social media. So our website is just lansingwomen.org. Super simple. And then our Facebook, Instagram, all of our social media is just at Lansing Women.
Okay.
The Facebook probably is a little more active than the others just because we have kind of the most engagement there. So that's kind of where we make a lot of our announcements as well as on the website itself. But there's tons of ways to get involved. I mean, you can obviously donate cash, which we are always in need of because we are a poor nonprofit. But there's also, you can volunteer, you can teach classes, you can be corporate sponsors, you can do in-kind donations, you can show up at events, you can get a boat, you can, get a VIP table at the comedy show. There's so many ways. A lot of community members, they're donating their business clothes, they're donating unused personal hygiene items, they're donating boxes of tampons. We go through hundreds of products a day that we're giving out to the community, so that's always really important too. So kind of no matter where your walk of life is or where you are financially, there's always a way to support your community. You can do that with the Women's Center or you can do that with any other local nonprofit. I mean, just getting involved is so vital to a community.
And somebody that is listening to this and saying, man, I know somebody or maybe myself that could strengthen myself with these services.
Yeah.
What's the best way for them to approach it?
Probably either just walk in when you have, some time to spend. You can just walk in. You don't need an appointment other than counseling, which you do have to call, or give a call or an email. There's so many ways. I mean, we don't care how you contact us. We just want you to contact us. Like if you need help, reach out in whatever way is easiest for you.
Okay.
We'll flex around that.
That's awesome. Well, this is I honestly didn't know how this was going to go. I was like,
I know, right? We did all right. Huh?
Yeah, we were fine in this thing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I think this is a great organization. I think it's a very, powerful was said multiple times in this, and it is probably the right word as far as describing everything. I'm glad you guys invented the safe space.
Thank you.
It is.
I'm going to go ahead and take credit for that.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. Well, we look forward to the Dragon Boat Race. We look forward to being helpful if any way possible.
Fantastic. Appreciate
thanks
you
again
guys
for joining
so much.
us today, and yeah, we'll be in touch soon.
Sounds good.
Thanks so much.